So this is the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge, and when they first teased this phone, with the main headlining feature being how thin it was, the first thought that I had was like, do we actually want thinner phones? Because this is a product category that's already very thin and very light. So the idea of a premium, super thin and light version is just like, where are we going with this? But having gotten this thing in, I think my perspective on it has changed quite a bit. So it is very thin. If you compare this device to like the regular S25 lineup, this is the S25 Ultra, quite a bit thinner. And you compare it to the regular S25, it's still thinner than that. But even if you compare it to the Fold products, so these are foldable phones, and you crack one of these things open, it's now half the thickness of a regular phone. It's comparable to the thickness of half a Fold phone. So it's very thin, but that's not the thing that kind of changed my perspective. It's the combination of the thinness and its weight that makes it just feel very different from a typical phone. Now, you're probably thinking, bro, it's not even a 30-gram difference. Like, what are we doing here? And I get it. It seems very insignificant on paper, but when you pick this thing up and just like rotate it around compared to like this is the S25 Plus, it just feels really strange that a phone is this light and this agile. It's neat. Now, the reality is, if you have a phone like this and you put a case on it, like most people typically would, you lose a lot of the thin and light characteristics that this phone has. But when I step back for a second, the most impressive thing to me about the S25 Edge is the technical and just engineering complexity that's required to be able to pull this thing off, to be able to shrink components small enough to be able to fit it into a frame of this thickness in one generation. It's actually really impressive. So up here in Canada, we get two colors. We get the titanium silver and then titanium black. And as the name would suggest, it's a titanium frame. Presumably because when you have a device of this thinness, you gotta go with the most rigid frame material that you can, and titanium is there for that. But then, to be able to fit everything inside this frame, you have to reduce the height of every component that you can. So like the motherboard, the display panel, the speaker module, the battery, every single component that you can reduce that height on, you're gonna try to pull it off while also still retaining a proper phone experience, right? So let's start off with the screen. This is a 6.7-inch panel. It's the same panel as, at least very similar to my eye, if not the same, as the panel on the S25 Plus. They're both 6.7 inches. Now in terms of the glass that protects the device, on the front we have Gorilla Glass Ceramic 2, and then on the back we have Victus 2. The Ceramic 2 is new for Samsung. I think this is the first device that they've showcased this new material on. It's just gonna help with durability on a device like this. Now in terms of performance, this is running the Snapdragon 8 Elite. It's a very energy efficient chip like we've seen before, but on this device, I was very surprised that they still have a vapor chamber in here. I ran some tests just to see how this device handles a thermal load, and it's surprisingly good for a device that is so thin. Now, it also has wireless charging. That was another thing that surprised me. Like, there were devices a few years back that would remove the wireless coils because they were like, it's too thick. It's gonna add a millimeter to the device. But this still retains 25-watt wireless charging with the ability to charge other devices if you put it on, like earbuds or something. It also has a fingerprint sensor that, from my testing, was the same speed as the regular S25. The speakers still sound good, and even though it's a thinner frame like this with less room in there, it sounds very similar to what I get from the S25 Plus. Now there are a couple components of this device that are very difficult to shrink down. The first one is the camera. So if you'll notice, this device has a very prominent camera bump. It actually protrudes out quite a bit, more so than even the camera bump on the S25 Plus. Like, this was already fairly large of a camera bump, and this is just even more. And these camera bumps are very difficult to shrink down because phone companies try to go for bigger sensors. Bigger sensors are able to capture more light data, just get better image quality. Now, the main camera is a 200 megapixel sensor, and it's supposedly the same as the one on the Ultra. Some early shots with it seemed solid. And then there's the 12 megapixel ultra wide. There is no telephoto lens. It's just a 2-camera system. If you want any kind of zooming, it's done through the cropping of the sensor and or digital zooms. The other component, though, that didn't shrink down, at least not in the way that we would like, is the battery. So this is a 3900 milliamp hour battery. It's smaller than the batteries on the S25 Plus and S25 Ultra, but it's even smaller than the battery on the regular S25, and that had a smaller screen than this. And surprisingly, this device still uses regular lithium-ion battery tech. So on typical lithium-ion batteries, you get like 200 to maybe 250 watt hours per kilo of battery material. But there's a new type of lithium battery that uses silicon carbon anodes that pack 300 to 350 watt hours per kilogram of battery. It's a significant increase, and from my testing on phones that use those types of batteries, you can get a 15 to even 20% increase in battery life just from switching the anode material. It's just like a more energy dense material. And a bunch of phones use this tech already, like the OnePlus 13, Xiaomi's 15, the Vivo X200, a bunch of Honor phones. So I am surprised, and if I'm being honest, disappointed that they didn't bring that tech into this phone, because the S25 Edge is very expensive. And of all the Samsung devices, this would be the phone that would make most use of just a more energy dense battery pack. It's not on here. But I think that if you think about what does this actually mean for the phone industry? Obviously, this is not like the most practical phone. This is not a phone for everybody, but the idea that they now have the capability to produce a thinner and lighter product like this, I think this tech just trickles through the entire lineup over the years. And I imagine over the next little bit, we just see thinner and thinner phones from Samsung, hopefully with improved battery technology as they get access to it at the scale that they need to. Okay, there you have it. This is the new S25 Edge.